busy. I didn't get an introduction. It's good to see you all here. I kind of prepared the topic on leadership. So it's more of actually. I'm really nervous, especially with our online viewing audience over there. Hi guys. So in terms of the topic, I think what we did first was actually we took a lot of your feedback from last time. So those of you who came last time, thanks for providing your feedback. It was really kind of something that I did look at. We looked at as a group together. So we looked at different topics, like there were examples of trying to have future open forums with the fear of God as a topic. Trying to bring in current events and try to make them more applicable to our sessions here and how we can have life applications for them. Also about, someone wrote characteristics of God. And I think that's what we have to kind of landed on, is characteristics of God. How can we see what characteristics God has, and how can we learn from that, apply that to our lives, and then use that to just continuously strengthen ourselves in different life decisions that we have. So that's how we kind of prepared and put together this session. So we ended up on the character of Christ and just using different leadership qualities and taking a look at those and trying to apply those to our lives. So today, the topic of leadership, I tried to see if we can just take a step back and look at leadership, and then there's other qualities to leadership, which is, so we have a little PowerPoint here. You see the two qualities that listed below is serving and submission. So those are the two that I kind of pulled out of the topic of leadership. And so we could get into that. Just to talk about the two pieces that I have above that. So leadership in the Bible. So there was one specific, when I looked up the word leadership and did a search query on the Bible for leadership, there was one verse that just came out and just said, trying to be a leader, the first thing that you have to do is serve. So serving, I'll get to the verse, but I think what really comes out of that verse is this leadership style that is actually, if you look up leadership and try to read about it, it's actually it's called servant leadership. So a whole leadership style has been brought out of, and I think it's biblical, because actually the references that I've seen on that topic of servant leadership had a lot of biblical references to it. So there's actually a leadership style that is called servant leadership. So we'll talk about, look at that. It's pretty simple. I think it's very straightforward. And then the other topic that I looked up a passage that also had, I actually experienced a sermon, and I thought that was such a great message, and I think we don't hear it too often in just the sense of, we hear a lot of topics on love and peace and harmony, and I think this was something that really brought to life, some things that you're not supposed to do. And it just really impacted me, so I wanted to share that with you. And coming out of that story, I'm just trying to pull out different, leadership as a spiritual gift. So God gives you different gifts that you could use for leadership, and not to use it in the wrong ways. So that's the background of the topic, and we'll also have some reflection time and then a discussion period. So that's the agenda for today. So let me just take a swig here. Okay, now getting into it. All right. So I prepared a lot. Let me show you all of these pages of just different things. So I've got actually 27 pages. And so it's gonna be, I'm kidding, this is just an example. So I just have this, that's it. All right. So I know Vinny came up here prepared like crazy last time, but I only got 3 pages. So we're gonna have to make this quick. I'm kidding, it's gonna last a good chunk of time. So leadership, just to to give us the context, right, the definition is up there. It's the action of leading a group or people, or an organization. And another one is the state or position of being a leader. So other synonyms of leadership are being able to provide guidance, leading people, providing direction, managing, to be able to command, right? So those are different synonyms. This Shift F7 for all you guys on Microsoft Word. Highlight a word, Shift F7. And then some examples, while I was just looking online, were of Gandhi, George Washington, Hitler, but cross them out. I saw them online, but cross them out. And Muhammad too. What? Okay, but I just put them on there because it was listed. And then Mandela, Churchill. So just a couple examples from Gandhi. He was a non-violent. He tried to stand up for our country and try to bring us independence from the British rule. So in a non-violent way, he was able to protest, and that was really different in that time compared to crusaders and crazy killings and stuff. And so he really had some people skills, right? Being able to work with other leaders, to work with his own community, to build them up and say, hey, we need to have independence, but let's do it in this way. So he actually was leading by example. He had a really motivational approach to people, just coming and doing the way that he kind of led, right? So a very peaceful, humble way of, and to some extent that's even some of that servant leadership, right, role. George Washington, this country is older than 200 years. So someone who actually was the first president strategically had a vision for a country and built it up, and it's still lasting that long with all of the judiciary and Congress and all that. So, right, so I mean, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, someone who was able to, in the midst of a war, internal war with your people from your own country that were trying to split out the country into, break it into two different halves, was able to fix that situation and bring togetherness, bring together unity. And he was really, had strong beliefs. So with that slavery issue, he was able to sign the Emancipation Proclamation and free, cut slavery, right? So, I mean, great leader, making strong decisions, right? Commanding people, commanding armies. Churchill, another one. He was very, this is the British Prime Minister back in the day when Hitler was there. So he helped and was essential from the British country to be able to overthrow Hitler and to knock him out, right? So he was very persistent. He was very determined. They actually called him very fearless for being such a great leader. So that's the context that we know leadership as, right? It's these huge, what feels like huge people that have just made tremendous impact in this world. So that's the context of leadership, right? So now in taking that and trying to talk about it from a biblical standpoint, the last bullet point I had up there was just how can we take that leadership and then also just like put that aside now. I feel that it's kind of like a separate thought, and so let's take a look at the Bible, right? And I think looking at Jesus. So Jesus, we feel, is one of the greatest leaders of all time, right? He's been able to make such an impact on this world. There's Christians in every country. There's followers of Christ everywhere, right? So one of the most influential people who had his life, really service for 3 years has impacted, this whole world. So one of the greatest leaders of all time is Jesus, and just some examples that I threw out that we already know. He's the maker of this earth. So earth, ocean, air, the sky, right? And galaxies beyond this earth and this planet. So there was a book, Crazy Love by Francis Chan. He tells you to watch a YouTube video of just trying to, I think the video is called Being Awestruck, by God's presence or who God is. So just to put him in context before he delved into his book. And he talked about how God, if you zoom out of this, if you pretend you're Google Earth, right, you zoom out, he lives in California, so 10,000 kilometers up, you can actually see the curvature of the Earth. And he zooms out, you see the planet, and then he zooms out, and you see the moon that's right next to the planet Earth. And you zoom out, and you see some other planets, and you see other stars. You zoom out, you keep zooming out, and he zoomed out to the galaxy. You see the sun, you see the galaxy now, and then he zoomed out to the galaxy, and there's like over 350 million or some other exponential number of galaxies. I don't know how humans found that out, but because we're just like a tiny speck, like within this humongous atmosphere, right? So the designer of all of that, he made time, he made space, because they're talking about the earth and everything. He made order. So I just can't believe, how a mouse gets eaten by a snake, and an eagle eats a snake, and there's just like order all over the place, right? So there's schools, I don't know how all that came to be, and it's like how to, microorganisms, life. So the maker of all of this, he's calling all the shots, right? So the maker of all of this, and then I have the verse there, right? So he is able to, if we look at John chapter 13, verses 3 to 5, I want to read that. So Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. So that's just like so impacting, right? The maker of everything doing this act of service, this such humble, dirty, messy act of service, right? So that's the context of the conversation. I just want to pray right before we go into it. So dear Heavenly Father, we just praise you, we worship you, we thank you for being such a great God for us, Jesus. We love you and we want to learn from you today. We just pray that you could open our minds, you could open our hearts, and teach us something, Jesus, that we need to learn, that's something that we can apply to our life, that we can touch, just it's so real, just make it so real for us, Jesus. And we ask that you just help us to help me to communicate this well, Jesus, take this nervousness away from me, and just give me clean and smooth sense of thought, Jesus, and help us to really delve into your word and understand what you're trying to say and apply it to our lives. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Okay, so I'm going to read one more slide about I'm going to read one more slide before we go into my topics. This is once again, the secular way of how leadership thinks, and what Jesus just showed us was something totally different. Right? So leadership qualities. I'm going to read a couple of them actually, and then you'll get the idea. So leadership qualities. So for people in the back, I'll just read the highlights. Right. So it's empathy, consistency, honesty, direction, communication, flexibility, and conviction. So out of all the lists that I saw, this was like the best. I think there was like 7. It was on leadership.com/toolbox or something like that. So empathy is creating a legitimate rapport with your staff. Makes it less likely that personal issues and resentment can creep in and derail the group. When your team knows that you are empathetic to their concerns, they will be more likely to work with you and share your vision rather than foster negative feelings. Right? Oh, man, that's empathy. You need to use that. Okay. consistency. Being a consistent leader will gain you respect and credibility, which is essential to getting buy-in from a group. By setting an example of fairness and credibility, the team will want to act the same way. Right? So being consistent in the decisions you make, fair, the way that you interact with other people, and it's fair to everybody across the board, even to people who are crazy. Man, that'll go a long way. So honesty, another one, honesty. Direction, having the vision to break out of the norm and aim for great things. Then the wherewithal to set the steps necessary to get there is an essential characteristic of good leadership. By seeing what can be and managing the goals of how to get there, a good leader can create impressive change. Right? So being able to have direction, think outside the norm, right? So, and then communication, you need to have communication, flexibility, and conviction, right? So those are other leadership traits. So, all right, so that's the background. So let's take a look at another passage. I'm sorry, I'm going to hop around a little bit. So if you have your Bibles, or there should be a Bible in the pew. So Matthew chapter 20, verses 20 through 28. Verses 20 through 28. Okay, so this is just a story that, I think when I really got to look at this topic of leadership, and I think the way that we talked about it in our groups, saying, what should we talk about in our open forums, we really just were trying to say, leadership, it's a good quality. When you first think of it, we all want to achieve some kind of leadership role and have some kind of power. And in this case, there's a mother that is trying to get her kids to have a leadership role. You're pushed into it from parents, from different aspects. And there's just like an awe factor, a wow factor. Oh yeah, he did something, great. So let's just take a look at this story. And this is where the term that this leadership style of servant leadership, I feel, comes from. Right? So the verse is prefaced with the title of Jesus Teaches About Serving Others. So, actually, does someone want to read that? Someone got the Bible? Speak loud. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I can't read today.
Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. What is it you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand, and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I am drinking? I am going to drink. We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right hand, my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
All right, so you guys get that story? A mother tries to bring she's an older lady, so her kids are a little bit older, probably my age. And so your mom was telling you in front of Jesus, these two guys want to be leaders. Put them on your right and your left side. Let them be your right and left hand. Because Jesus he's a leader. He's coming up at that time. He's doing service, right? This is in the middle of his ministry time. It was 3 years of, when he started that, after that he started that miracle of turning water into wine. So Jesus says that. There's that verse, right, 26, where it says something, it says, whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever is first, it should be last. Right? And he's saying that to his disciples who, when that mother and those two people came over, the disciples are just like, man, who's this lady that come over here and tell her kids to be part of this leadership group, right? So, but that's where that verse comes from, right? And so that's where we kind of learn this, being able to, if you want to be a leader, you must first learn how to be a servant. So I tried looking up this example, trying to find another story where it really drives this home, but I couldn't find anything else in the Bible that says this. I was thinking, what is God trying to say if I can't find another example about it? What do I feel that God is trying to say with this verse and saying, to be a leader, you first need to be a servant. And then there's no examples, right? So, but there's examples. I mean, I just need to make a correlation. There's stories of healing and miracles of God providing service to different people. But the things that I took out of it is just, so the second bullet point I have up there is, serving helps you know what the issues are and helps you tackle them, right? So if you're able to, I think our age is perfect in the way that we can go to different people and try to be of service, right? We can learn. We don't have life experiences. I think we're getting them. Most of our life experiences are, I mean, it's impactful. Some of us go through a lot even at a young age, but if you feel that you've lived a comfortable life, then this is perfect for us the way that if you want to be a leader, you need to serve. So if you know how to be with people that have issues and try to work with them, so I got a couple of notes here. So knowing others' pains, I think to some extent we hear so much bad news that we block out hurts and pains for different people. You see them. You see them on the street. You see them in your classroom. You see them in your home, and we just block it out. And we're just like, oh man, that's bad. I don't want to deal with that, right? So just having that additional consciousness and that's part of I think a little bit of the self-awareness that I have below, but knowing the issues, right? And then what else do I have? So I said, just having that humility to be able to say, I really want to work with you. I just, trying to deal with someone, calling them up when you feel that they're in pain and talking about it. I don't know what it is, right? Because I don't do that all the time either. But this is something I'm learning and I have to apply in my life too. So having that humility to come down to a messy situation, and if not being able to help them, but just be with them, comfort them. Maybe that's all you can do, right? The other way that I just knew that this servant leadership is true is just because God has done all the serving. I read another article that had stated that servant leadership must be true. It had some bullet points. Actually, Vijay sent it to me, and it's true influence. So, and by that, that article was saying God impacted the disciples so much so that actually 7 out of the 12 of them were executed because of their beliefs, because of how they were proclaiming the gospel and sharing it with the world. They sacrificed, they did the ultimate sacrifice, and sacrificing their life for the work that Jesus was passing on for them to do, right? And so, and this is kind of correlated to that verse that we read, that you need to be a servant. And Jesus washed the disciples' feet. And that passage was actually right before the Last Supper and before he was going to get betrayed by Judas. And when Jesus washed their feet, that was kind of like a last symbol saying, I'm sending you guys on your way. And with the influence that he had on them, true influence, they did their work diligently, and so much so that they were executed for their beliefs. Right? And then the last one, so self-awareness. So we said knowing others' pains and being conscious at a deeper level. There's that song by Brandon Heath, I'm sure you guys have heard it, Give Me Your Eyes. So just having compassion at an extra level to see the way that God sees a situation to go in the midst of hurting people and really try to help them, right? It's always been those miracles that he provides. It's always been like a really bad situation where he comes in and he kind of saves them at that time. So that's the self-awareness. And I'm going to derail off of that topic just a little bit. So I took a test, and coming out of this test, all of this feedback was given to me. So this is like a personal profile test, right? And we talked about this at our last retreat a little bit. And so I dug it up. This is from 10/7/2009. I kept it because I felt that it really connected to me, and there was a lot of information here just about my personal self. And when we talk about self-awareness, I think it's important for us to be able to realize who we are, what our strengths are, and to be able to play off of those and help other people, right? So this is where, when George told me this was going to be recorded, I was like, man, I don't know if I can record this because I'm going to be sharing some personal stuff, right? So this is where the editing goes 3, 2, 1, and chop. And then resume later. Okay, then you can post it. I'm not going to share too much. Come on. So, right? So, like, from the overview, I'm just going to read a paragraph. I'll share a little bit, and then we'll get back into it. But it says, Shelby is realistic and dependable. He is keenly interested in how and why things work. He tends not to trust strangers and is concerned about his family, reputation, and job. He is seen as an unpretentious colleague who has a good understanding of the way things work. He functions by the rule book, and if procedures are changed, he may conclude he's being taken advantage of. So, I mean, there's good things about me, there's bad things about me in this thing, right? Decision making. So that was my overview, and there's a lot more interacting with others, there's more about my decision making skills. It tells me, like, for real, I'm like, oh, man, you guys know me, now it's all mine, and you guys are gonna know. It has a list of my strengths and weaknesses, like bullet points right here. So I'm a keen observer, pay attention to detail, disciplined and precise, lives in the moment and for the moment, resilient and resourceful, responsible. So these are possible weaknesses, okay? So tendency not to act until all the facts are available, can appear indecisive, may get bogged down in the detail, right? Okay, let's move on. My value to a team. So I did this on behalf of work. So they have different measures, right, that they're doing. Value to a team is a force of stability, follows instructions to the letter, right? Fair play, communication skills, barriers to effective communication, break promises, that's on there, that's not good, undermine his authority, interpret his thoughts, processes, straight from the agenda, like I'm doing right now. Possible blind spots are there. So I think all in all, you get an idea, right? So I think unconsciously, we have an understanding of who we are. I mean, it takes one of these tests to kind of see it on paper and just kind of be like a third party reading it. But I think self-awareness, and so here's the last piece I'll talk about, I'll put this away. But there's a chart, right? And there's different colors. Each color has a different type of person that you are, and there's a dot that gets put on this target type page, and it places you based off of all the questions that you answered and where your judgment is into one of these fields. So, for example, are you an observer? The purple color here is a reformer. The red color is a director. Not a director in the sense of your position, but director in telling people what to do, trying to play that director type role. Are you a motivator in orange? Inspirer, yellow. Helper? Are you a helper? Are you a supporter? Are you a motivator? Are you a coordinator? And so I fall right in between coordinator and observer. So that's where I fall, right? But, and what we do is, when we took this test, we came back to our teams, and we were like, hey, what color are you? Right? And so we try to see what our strengths are, and it's just good to be able to see who that other person is. What's their strengths? Potentially, what could you go to them for, right? That's what it's for. If someone's a director, if I'm just an observer and a coordinator, that's me. And if someone else is a director, then I can probably go to them and be like, hey, in what type of situation would you do? I mean, in this situation, what would you do? Right? Would you do this or this? Right? These are my options. If I'm a coordinator or observer, maybe I'll go to someone who has a helper type role, right? I need help doing this, right? I don't know. So that's the way that we use it. I think to some extent, we have an understanding of who we are and what our strengths are. You can also see at a conscious level those other people's weaknesses or their strengths. And so being able to do that, I think it gets a little more philosophical, but you could be essentially trying to serve them better. Right? And so that's the way that this exercise was done, was to be able to work together with someone in your team and serve them better or help them better, right? Or work more cohesively. So, so then back to the last couple of bullet points to just wrap up the servant leadership. So if someone could keep track of time, because I don't know if I'm just doing, what time did we start? Talking. Let's start talking. Okay, I don't know. All right, let's keep going. All right, so then, so the last couple of points is just that Jesus served people and provided healing and miracles. He was the best example in terms of a serving person. And I think we'll get into this in the next one, but what I prefaced here is just that he really has a sense of what his role is within coming to this earth as the Son of God, being with people, but still being able to still point towards God and say, there's a higher being, there's someone that we should be following. God is who I follow. Everything that he does, he's the Son of God, so he's partly God, so he does a lot of things himself, but I think he really just, his role coming into this world is, he was self-aware of what his position was. But I think a lot of, Vijay talked about this in the introduction, we all struggle to know that. If someone was just to come up to us and say, your role is to do this, that would make things a lot easier. But, so he knew what his role was in the whole scheme of things, the whole, history-making, being there, having this Bible, 2,000, I don't know how many years later, for people to reflect and study on all these words and passages and to critically analyze this. He thought all that through. It's written. He did his life perfect, right? The best leader, the best person that we should have as an example in our life. So, just to go back to the first bullet point, if you want to, you can reference those two other passages. They say pretty much the same exact thing, in that if you want to be a leader, you first have to be a servant. Right? So that's that. All right. So the next one is spiritual leadership. And this one is taken, let's look at Numbers chapter 16. This is a little bit longer, so 1 through 35. So actually, if you do, you should get that Bible in front of you, if you can, because you might want to just look at the story. It was so impactful for me, and hopefully, you guys can get something out of it. So if you can follow along, you might have to reread different parts and stuff like that. So this passage is the context of it is, I know I'm going to read a good chunk of it, but let me see what the context. It's Moses, right? And Moses and Aaron, they actually already led the Jews out of Egypt. So they're in the wilderness. They've been in the wilderness for a long time. They're trying to find the promised land, right? So while they're in the wilderness, there's just all this complaining all day long. These guys are complaining. They're complaining about their hardships. They're in a desert. They're living in a desert for like 40 years, right? So where's a bathroom? Where can I shower? Where can I get some water? I mean, hardships, being in the desert for that long, living in the desert. So they're complaining about that. They're complaining about the lack of meat. They're complaining about, and the reason why I specifically point that out is because Jesus actually provided to them. They were complaining so much that Jesus provided, actually, is there a reference? Okay, I'll just tell you. They complained so much that Jesus provided them a whole bunch of ravens, and they just, I don't know, they just fell down on the ground, and these guys started beating them with sticks and killed them and started eating them. But God sent all these ravens in the middle of the desert and provided them meat. And then they actually gorged themselves so much that actually God killed a portion of the Jews. So it's just, and they still complained after that. So they were complaining about facing the giants in the promised land, so they were hesitating to go into the promised land. And they complained about Moses and Aaron's authority. And that's where the story starts, right? So Moses and Aaron have been in the desert for 40 years, and they are playing kind of like a pastor or a church leader type role. Right? God has appointed Moses. He helped them out of Egypt, and they're in the desert now. So while he is the leader, so the preface for this chapter says, many leaders rebel against Moses. So back to that, Moses and Aaron's authority and leadership, they're pushing back. They don't like it. So here's the story. So there's three guys, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. All right, so I'm going to read this through. I know it's a lot, but let's just catch on and try to follow along the story. So one day, Korah, son of Israel, a descendant of Kohath, son of Levi, conspired with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, son of Pelet, from the tribe of Reuben. They incited a rebellion against Moses, along with 250 other leaders of the community, all prominent members of the assembly. They united against Aaron and Moses and Aaron and said, "You have gone too far. The whole community of Israel has been set apart by the Lord, and He is with us, with all of us. What right do you have to act as though you are greater than the rest of the Lord's people?" So these three guys, Korah is actually the leader, but he gets Dathan and Abiram, and they're conspiring with 250 other leaders, and they came to Moses and they told him, Israel has been set apart by the Lord, and He is for all of us. What right do you have that is greater than the rest of us? Because we're all the Lord's people. So he's saying Moses and Aaron are a little bit higher than those 250 leaders, right? Okay, so moving on. When Moses heard what they were saying, he fell face down on the ground, and he said to Korah and his followers, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show us who belongs to Him and who is holy. The Lord will allow only those who He selects to enter His own presence. Korah, you and all your followers must prepare your incense burners. Light fires in them tomorrow and burn as incense before the Lord. Then we will see whom the Lord chooses as His Holy One. You Levites are the ones who have gone too far." So all this complaining, sick and tired of complaining, right? Moses is right back at them and says, "What?" Because he was appointed by God first, and those leaders were selected after the fact. So he's like, "What? We'll see tomorrow morning who God chose to be the leader for the people," right? But he's not saying this as confident. He fell face down on the ground, so I just feel that there's like a humbleness about them. He's just appalled at the way that they're coming at him with this, right? So then moving on, next paragraph. Then Moses spoke to Korah, "Now listen, you Levites. Does it seem insignificant to you that the God of Israel has chosen you
from among all the community of Israel to be near him, so you can serve the Lord's tabernacle and stand before the people to minister to them? Korah, he has already given this special ministry to you and your fellow Levites. Are you now demanding the priesthood as well? The Lord is the one you and your followers are really revolting against. For who is Aaron that you are complaining about him? So what's he saying here? He's saying that so Korah is already a leader within the community. And just to give you context, yes. There's 250 leaders. So just to imagine how many people are there. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, they're all leaders. They're like the top leaders of the 250 leaders, right? So in the previous reference, Israel has actually 600,000 soldiers. So if you just do the math in terms of if each soldier were to have a family, it comes out to like 2.5 to 3 million people. So that many people left Egypt, and they're the Israelites. So 2.5 to 3 million people left Egypt, and they're sitting in the desert with crazy hardships. And so these Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, they're all kind of related. They're all kind of like, what's that one other community thing that you guys go to the picnic? Quran? Something, right? 10 minutes left? All right. So yeah, I'm there. But anyway, so the Levites is a community, and Abiram, Dathan, and Korah are from that community, right? So what Moses is telling them is, you guys have position. What you're complaining about is you want the priesthood, what his role is, as well as that, and there's 3 million people. These guys are the leaders. And so what are you complaining about? And then the next paragraph. Then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram and the sons of Eliab, but they replied, we refuse to come before you. Isn't it enough that you brought us out of Egypt, a land flowing with milk and honey, to kill us here in this wilderness, and that you now treat us like subjects? What's more, you haven't brought us into another land flowing of milk and honey. You haven't given us a new homeland with fields and vineyards. Are you trying to fool these men? We will not come. So Moses is trying to talk to them, and they're like, no, we don't want to talk to you. You haven't fulfilled all your change promises. They're like how we're selling Obama right now, right? So they're just saying, we're not going to talk about this. We'll deal with this tomorrow morning. But what this really comes out of, as I read some of the commentary, is that in Egypt, there were priests. So these priests had political power, they had money, they had wealth. And I think what the commentary is saying is, why did these leaders, who already had really good positions within the church, try to take over Moses' and Aaron's position, right? So it was really out of jealousy, it was out of, these wrong ideas, is what they're saying is the reason why they want to take the lead role, right? Okay, so then next paragraph. Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, do not accept their grain offerings. I have not taken so much as a donkey from them, and I have never hurt a single one of them. And Moses said to Korah, you and all your followers must come here tomorrow and present yourselves before the Lord. Aaron will also be here. You and each of your 250 followers must prepare an incense burner and put incense on it, so you can all present them before the Lord. Aaron will also bring his incense burner. So he's telling them to come tomorrow morning and bring an incense burner, 250 people. So each of these men prepared an incense burner, lit the fire, placed incense on it, and then they all stood at the entrance of the tabernacle with Moses and Aaron. Meanwhile, Korah had stirred up the entire community against Moses and Aaron, and they all gathered at the tabernacle entrance. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to the whole community, and the Lord said to Aaron, get away from all these people so that I may instantly destroy them. So, God is pissed too, right? And he's about to kill all these people. 200, not only 250, but he gathered up more people and brought them to the front of the tabernacle. Let's see what happens next. Then Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground. "Oh God," they pleaded, "you are the God who gives breath to all creatures. Must you be angry with all the people when only one man sins?" So look at Moses' heart in terms of the leader, right? He's got empathy. Why does everybody have to die if these guys are the ones who's causing the problem? And the Lord said to Moses, "Then tell all the people to get away from the tents of Korah and Dathan and Abiram." So Moses got up and rushed over to the tents of Dathan and Abiram, followed by the elders of Israel. "Quick," he told them, "get away from the tents of these wicked men and don't touch anything that belongs to them. If you do, you will be destroyed for their sins." So all the people stood back from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the entrances of their tents, together with their wives and children and little ones. And Moses said, "This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these things that I have done. For I have not done them on my own. If these men die a natural death, or if nothing unusual happens to them, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord does something entirely new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them and all their belongings, and they go down alive into the grave, then you will know that these men have shown contempt for the Lord." He hardly finished speaking the words when the ground suddenly split open beneath them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men, along with their households and all their followers who were standing with them, and everything they owned. So they went down alive into the grave, along with all their belongings. The earth closed over them, and they all vanished from among the people of Israel. All the people around them fled when they heard their screams. "The earth will swallow us too," they cried. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord and burned up the 250 men who were offering incense. So, that's crazy. I mean, whoa, right? He just killed people who were trying to, overtake Moses' leadership role. God appointed Moses. I think they would have known that with all the things that he's been doing and leading them out of Egypt. So, that's just crazy, right? So, what I learned from that in terms of life application, right? What do we learn from that? So, respect, right? Respect that leadership role. And Moses, who was actually playing both ways. He was on God's side. He knew God appointed him, but he was with the people, and he didn't want people to get destroyed just because 3 people were trying to cause some problems. But he knew his role, and God played his role. So just respecting people who have been appointed with their spiritual gifts. The top of that slide says leadership of the spiritual gift. This is in the church, right? So we'll reflect on how we look at this and apply this to the real world. I think we should all get our meat of the matter, our characteristics from the Bible, and apply them to the real world. So respecting leadership, and then also don't follow the crowd. So Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, they gathered up all these people and brought them in front of Moses and said, "Yeah, these guys are right. Why don't you give him the position? How come he doesn't get to do things? We would have been in the promised land by now. We'd have milk and honey and vineyards and stuff." But don't go along with the crowds because that's the massive group, right? And then this one, the commentary says, don't follow the crowd and don't hesitate. Because this happened in minutes, right? He destroyed 250 people with their families, with their kids, with their belongings, with their homes, everything in minutes. This is all occurring, right? So don't hesitate to do that. And then being content with what you have. Don't do it for the wrong reasons. So those are the things that I kind of pulled out of it. And we'll have some reflection time where you guys can think about that a little bit more. That's kind of leading to our discussion time. And then for me was fear of God. So that was a topic that other people, I think one other person mentioned in their suggestion card. If that doesn't tell you fear of God, it's like, whoa, right? So that's fear of God to its utmost. But check this out. This is what I found even more. So I'm going to drive this home in this next one. Let's pick up from verse 41. But the very next morning, the whole community of Israel began muttering again against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the Lord's people." As the community gathered to protest against Moses and Aaron, they turned toward the tabernacle and saw that the cloud had covered it and the glorious presence of the Lord appeared. So they're going back to Moses again and saying he killed all the leaders of the Israelites. These were leaders of the Israelites. And so now there's just Moses and Aaron. They're the only ones. All right, so then see this. 43. Moses and Aaron came and stood in front of the tabernacle, and the Lord said to Moses, "Get away from all these people so that I can instantly destroy them." But Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground, and Moses said to Aaron, "Quick, take an incense burner and place burning coals on it from the altar. Lay incense on it and carry it out among the people to purify them and make them right with the Lord. The Lord's anger is blazing against them. The plague has already begun." Aaron did as Moses told him and ran out among the people. The plague had already begun to strike down the people, but Aaron burned the incense and purified the people. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people had died in the plague. So just to put that in context, on 9/11, nearly 3,000 people died. All right. And the tsunami that affected like 14 countries, 200,000 people have died. So just to put that number in context, this is a substantial amount. I mean, for someone to know about 9/11, the whole world knew about it, that was 3,000 people. This is 14,000 people of one community, and one with the 250 people before with their families. So, fear of God, and I think the quality that I'm pulling from that is submission. So I'm getting the time thing, but that's perfect because I'm getting into our reflection phase. So I guess, we could break out into groups now. So if we want to do that, I have some some reflection, and then a discussion item. The reflection is to talk about serving and submission, and then we'll have a discussion point, which is a current event type thing. So, what do you guys want to do? Break out into groups?